So I'm a member of a small team that sits inside the Enable group inside Microsoft AI and Research. The team sort of came together a couple of years ago when, and the project I'm going to be talking about was one of, I guess, the drivers behind it. But we sort of recognized that in many ways as a company, as an organization, the importance of innovation, the importance of living up to our mission of serving every person and organization on the planet to achieve more, to do the things that they care about. And that does translate to every person and every organization. And the team that I'm a member of, we've been sort of focusing on people with a range of disabilities or a range of different abilities, but doing so in a very inclusive and design-centric way. And hopefully some of the examples that I'll give will demonstrate how, by focusing deeply through design and through empathy on segments of the population which often get underserved or overlooked, we give ourselves the opportunity to use technology in new, empowering, innovative ways that have the potential to benefit everybody as well. So the project, or the program where we've partnered very closely with guide dogs here in the UK, is borne the name of Cities Unlocked. Originally, when we came together, and this was back in 2012, we produced a concept video, and we called it Family Day Out. And the interesting thing here for us was that our key deliverable here in collaboration with guide dogs was to produce a video. It was to tell a story of how technology could make a positive and empowering difference to people with sight loss. And we did a huge amount of research leading up to it, and I'll come to the importance of that a little bit later on. But in the video, we have Bill, who's the central character, and he's organising a family day out, a normal, typical, everyday activity. He's going to be taking with him his young son, who's about 11, 12 years old, full of beans, normal-sighted, but also his elderly father-in-law, who's beginning to lose his sight and therefore starting to deal with some of the anxieties associated with that and what that entails in terms of loss of mobility, loss of independence, and so on. And during the course of this 15-minute movie, we show Bill planning, preparing. We show them arriving at a train station, and Bill kind of knows where, because of sensors in the environment, their carriage is going to be. So he's able to guide his companions to that place. And they deal with travel disruption. They have a wonderful time eating a picnic in the park. They go to the Natural History Museum, really enjoy the exhibits there. At the end of the day, being a dutiful husband, he buys his wife a box of chocolates and a dress at a department store. So normal, common, everyday life activities. But looking at how technology could be used in an innovative way to really put Bill at the center of controlling that experience himself. So at its heart, when we talk about the technology behind Cities Unlocked, it's powered by the cloud, by a mobile device, and a headset. And going back to sort of Jason's point about spatial audio, one of the key innovations that we focused on when we did the original video was to, when we did that sweep of technologies, and because we were taking that 3 to 5 year time horizon back then in 2012, the first and, I guess, obvious choice would have been to look at vision. But I guess even at that time, we had a number of reservations about its feasibility within that time frame. And particularly over the last sort of 12, 18 months, there's been huge advancements in computer vision, machine vision, and so on. But in terms of practical everyday use, it still seems a little bit a way off. So we then settled on using sound. And in particular, sound presented spatially in 3D around you, which appears to come from outside of your head. But by virtue of being able to locate where you are, which way you're facing, and having a fix on that position, is then able to describe points of interest to you. So for example, and I must say I don't really have a proper sense of bearing here. Let's say Milton Keynes train station is behind us, and there's a restaurant over there and a library over there. So I'd actually hear these points of interest appear from the origin of where those points of interest actually are. And now if I turn around, it's me as the person who's moved in the environment, and those points of interest are still where they are. So the train station, instead of now hearing it behind me, I'd hear it to the right of me. And it's this ability to be able to dynamically respond to a person, and in many ways their intention, and then describe the world around them, which lies at the heart of the experience that we've created. And what we've got over here, and you can see it's a properly hacked together sort of bone conduction headset, that at the back of it has a little module that does the head tracking. So very simple: compass, accelerometer, gyroscope, so that you know which way you're facing. But then the key part of the experience is the mobility and the processing which takes place in the cloud, because the device itself powers the ability to be able to have those sounds appear to come from outside of your head. And just going back to the research that we carried out with guide dogs, the bulk of the designers inside Microsoft, we recognize that we're not subject matter experts in this space at all, but guide dogs have years and years of experience in teaching people mobility skills and how to use a range of different mobility aids as well. So we spent countless hours walking in and around the streets of London. And our ability to then ask a person with sight loss at the point of a particular experience what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're actually experiencing, what would actually make a difference, whether they're on their own or with another person, if they had a particular task or an activity in mind, really helps to tease out some of the challenges and then gives us the opportunity to think about how technology can make a difference there. Now, the picture of the fountain there in the center is significant because we were wandering in and around, I think, the Temple Court area of London, and we could hear this fountain but not see it. And sometimes it would appear to come from front of us, at other times to the right of us. And it was only on reflection a couple of days later, myself and my colleague Amos Miller, we realized that sound, the fountain, was actually acting as a bit of an audio anchor, if you will. And that, in many ways, was the driver behind using sound rather than vision as well. So the work that we did to talk to Robin, your point about the importance and significance of collaboration, we wanted to take some of those ideas that we put together in the original video and then figure out, okay, how do we actually take these a step closer to reality? What would that take? And we worked with a number of different organizations and essentially created this sensor-enriched environment between Reading and London that enabled a person to walk from a suburb a couple of hundred yards to a bus stop. But this time, by virtue of the technology that we'd put together, they're hearing information of where they are and what's around them and what to anticipate and what to expect. So a person, instead of having to remember a route literally step by step off by heart, they now have the ability to be able to anticipate what's around the corner, for example. We then worked with Reading buses and equipped each of the number 9 buses with short range and a long range sensor, so that a person would know when the bus was appearing, and then once they were on the bus, we were able to actually switch the context and then give them information relevant to that. And that was a really sort of empowering experience, because the bus would come up a hill and then turn left. And the number of times that we saw a person with sight loss get up and start to get their belongings together, ready to board the bus, while all the sighted people were still waiting there, wondering what was going on. That sort of extra sense that the technology gave them was just amazing. Once they then got into town, they made their way into and then through the train station. We partnered very closely with Network Rail to once again light up Reading Station with sensors so that we could give a person proximity-based information. And through that information, they were then starting to able to construct a better picture of what the station was like, and then in a more independent way, make their own way to the platform. And then the train journey into London was very similar to the bus journey, because as these vehicles were moving from one place to another, the person could get information, once again delivered spatially, of where they were, what was around them, nearby points of interest, and so on. And to carry on the theme of a normal, common, everyday activity, stopping off at Tesco to go off and just buy a quick sort of lunchtime meal deal. But it enabled us to start that transition from an outdoor environment, using different modes of transport, and then going into indoors. And essentially, we worked with all of these different partners and very closely with guide dogs to determine whether the technology that we were working on was in fact making any sort of positive or meaningful difference to a person. And guide dogs put together this sort of measure which had 17 different aspects related to mobility. I won't go through all of these, but they established a baseline first. So the route, the journey that I've just described, people doing that, and the majority of people did it, hadn't done it before, but doing it without technology and then with the technology itself. And thankfully, the feedback was very positive. We found that 10 of the 17 measures that guide dogs were using showed a significant improvement in a person's mobility and their overall independence. And thankfully, none of the other remaining 7 showed any deterioration. And in many ways, that was great, because at best we had hoped for was positive feedback on a person's experience of getting from one point to another. But on reflection, when people that we were working with came back and said, okay, this access to information that I have in this new and slightly different way certainly makes my journey more interesting and more enriched, but it's actually making me feel a little bit more confident. It's given me a greater sense of presence and being connected to the environment, which kind of was a bit of a wake-up call for us, because we recognized on reflection that what we had done the first time round was to reinforce the current mobility paradigm of getting from one point to another and going through known and well-defined routes. That if we were to truly empower an individual to get them off the known and memorized routes, give them the sense that they could explore, discover, go anywhere, that was what we then set out to do, and which meant that we basically had to throw away a lot of the design thinking, a lot of the sort of philosophy that drove the work that we did in phase 1, and really think about what it would mean to truly empower a person. So we recognize that a person, when they're given information, still is being essentially told what to do. And what we wanted to do was to move to a point where a person is more sort of heads up, it's more engaged with their environment. So instead of prescriptively telling a person what to do, we decided to provide more descriptive information and use that information then to enable a person to start to form their own associations and connections, because the information that's being delivered in 3D audio to actual places and points of interest in the environment itself. And the work that we did then focused on the centre of Reading, and we worked with 12 people with sight loss, 6 of whom had never been to Reading before. And in the course of a couple of hours, people were able to mentally map the different parts of town that they'd been to and understand their association and relationship with each other, which certainly took guide dogs by surprise, because this is not something that they had anticipated seeing. And you're carrying on in that sort of hackathon type of way of putting this technology together. You can see that we've still got bone conduction headsets, and we're sort of looking at now maybe off-the-shelf modules that do head tracking. We came up with this idea of using a little remote control device. So if the phone stays in your pocket, that's a good thing for us, because certainly for a person with sight loss, one hand is always going to be occupied, either with a cane, with a harness holding a dog. So every time you have to take your phone out and interact with it, it's a bit of an unnatural interaction, certainly if one hand is occupied. And we found that this introduction of a little remote control device that a person could just hold in their hand while they were still holding the cane or the guide dog gave them a sense of agency, of being able to, on demand, control the information that they were seeing. So in terms of where we are, one of the things that we've started to sort of see and work with guide dogs is that in many ways this represents, through technology, a paradigm shift in mobility. The ability for a person now to no longer be reliant or constrained to the 4 or 5 routes that they've memorized off by heart, but to have the potential to go anywhere they want and when they want, instead of being reliant on other people. And we're working very closely with guide dogs to really understand the impact of what this actually means for the training and mobility services that they provide. And as I mentioned before, a lot of it comes down to getting the technology out of the way. Now, there are a fair number of different technology components to this. There's a headset, there's a phone, and potentially a remote control device. But we find that instead of increasing complexity, when they are brought together in an appropriate, more harmonious way, technology seems to disappear. And a person's association, because of the way information is being provided to them, enriches their overall experience. And finally, just to reinforce that point about how these innovations have broader applicability, here are a number of different scenarios where, in many ways, I guess the majority of us as sighted people could benefit from technology like this as well. The first thing that we all tend to do when we go to a place we're not familiar with is to take our phone out, open up the mapping application, and start following the blue dot, hoping that we're heading in the right direction. Imagine not having to do that, but instead, through a headset or an earpiece that you're wearing, that information is just naturally presented to you, which then enables technology to get out of the way for you to feel more confident and less anxious. And I'll leave it at that. But thank you very much for your time.